Growing up in the United States, I've been conditioned to never go to the doctor, ever, in only saving it as a last resort.
Americans cannot afford to live at all.
I went almost a month no eating out.
Life's so damn high you can't even afford to die.
$6.15 fucking cents for a half a pound of Greek hot sweet peppers.
President Trump is tired of hearing about how much things are costing you.
I don't think a lot of people understand what's about to happen to the American economy.
And yet, people want $650,000 for these homes at what, 6.25% interest rates? Like, no wonder nobody can afford anything.
You know what's crazy is $40,000 a year to $120,000 a year.
You cannot even afford an apartment today. In fact, if you make twice the minimum wage, you cannot afford an apartment.
Life in America is becoming more expensive than ever before. The cost of living has reached a point where millions of people can no longer afford even the basics. Groceries, rent, gas, utilities, and healthcare have all surged in price, yet wages have barely moved. People are working harder, longer, and still falling behind. For many, life has turned into a constant struggle just to stay afloat. By the way, if you're watching this, we truly appreciate your support. We're actually getting close to reaching our first 1,000 subscribers, and every single one really motivates us to keep researching, writing, and producing these videos. So if you find this content important, please consider subscribing. It genuinely helps us continue shining a light on issues that matter. The question many Americans are asking now is simple: how did life get this expensive?
Growing up in the United States, I've been conditioned to never go to the doctor, ever, in only saving it as a last resort. I'm actually just curious, like, in other parts of the world, what do you do if you're sick? Like, do you go to the doctor? Or if you have stomach pains or back pains or whatever? It's so foreign of a concept to me to actually go to a doctor, because here they're just so prohibitively expensive. Even urgent care clinics, just to get into an urgent care without insurance, is to be seen as like $350. So medical care for most people in this country is just completely out the window. And we've just been kind of raised to tough it out. If you're sick, you just go to work anyway. If you're not feeling well, you just go to school anyway. How do I break out of this mold when I move abroad? You know, if I'm moving to Portugal, like, it's going to take a lot for me if I'm going to be under the weather to actually ring up a doctor. I feel like that is just a huge culture shock for me. So thanks for chiming in, and let us know, how does it work where you live?
Can anyone tell me what health insurance is for? You pay this huge premium every month, right? And then something happens and you have to use your health insurance. Example A. So you go to the doctor and the doctor tells you that you probably have a torn meniscus or some type of tear in your patellar tendon. And he says, you need an MRI so that I can see inside of your knee. And so you agree. You know, obviously you need to know what's going on inside your knee and why it's so painful and what happened to you. So the nurse comes in after the doctor leaves and says we have to get insurance to approve the MRI. And this is on a Tuesday. So on Wednesday, you message your insurance. You're like, hey, what's the status of my approval on my MRI? Insurance replies back to your message, we haven't gotten a request for an MRI for you. So you call the doctor's office and you leave a voicemail for the next 3 days trying to find out why they haven't submitted it and what the next step is, what you can do for pain, what you can do to help yourself because you can barely walk. They finally call you back. Today's Tuesday, so it's been 1 week since you went in to see the doctor. And they let you know that your MRI has been approved, but the copay is $515. $515. 515. And you don't have $515. So now you're stuck trying to figure out how to treat a knee that you can barely walk on. But you have insurance. But it's $515 for an MRI. But you don't have $515 just to pay out of pocket for an MRI. I work a full-time job and my husband works a full-time job. And I make pretty decent money.
Inflation is one of the main forces behind this crisis. The price of everyday items has risen drastically over the past few years. A grocery trip that cost $50 now easily costs $80 or more. Gas prices fluctuate, but they almost never return to what they once were. Utility bills take a larger share of household income, Even basic meals and daily essentials cost more than they used to. People feel this every day. The paycheck stays the same, but the cost of simply living keeps rising. The dollar is worth less, and the budget stretches thinner. Families are being forced to make choices they never had to make before. Which bills can wait? Which meals can be skipped? Which needs can they do without?
Americans cannot afford to live at all, okay? I just had a conversation with some coworkers, and they told me that some of their family members are actually living in their cars, right? They're living in cars to save money, right? They shower at the gym and they just sleep in their cars to save money and all that stuff because the rent is way too high. It's like nobody can afford to live. The only people that can afford to live, that can afford food and rent, comfortably is you got to be making like near $1 million, at least $500,000. Because even people that are six-figure earners, depending on where you live, they are struggling like crazy. But check this out. These are Americans living in their cars, yo.
Making brekkie in a grocery store parking lot. I eat off the pan because less dishes. Somewhere.
Day 37 of living in our car. We've been living in our car for 37 days. It's been very hard.
I shared yesterday that I've moved into my Subaru because I refuse to sign another lease and give tens of thousands of dollars to millionaire property management companies that I hate. Fuck capitalism. So here are some answers to questions that you guys had about how I'm doing this. Question was, where do I shower? I know a lot of people get gym memberships. I haven't done that yet because I haven't needed to do that. I'm in a little bit of a special situation where my family lives pretty close by where I'm at. They're like 40 minutes away and they live on a boat now. And so I have access to like the marina showers. I just need their key fob.
Okay, boom. I've been living in my car since May 13th, about 2 months and some change. Let's talk about it. So I bought this car knowing that I was probably going to have to make a tough decision. I do freelance work and video, and a lot of the money will come in late, as any freelance knows.
So how far is this going to get? Like, is this the new lifestyle? Are we going to do absolutely nothing about housing? Right? Is there going to be just no affordable housing at all? Like no $500, $700 apartments? None of that? Everything's just going to keep being more and more and more expensive? Because right now, there are about 3 million Americans, and you can Google this, right? You can do the research. Google it. There are about 3 million Americans living in their cars or van life, right? And those numbers are going up because people just can't afford anything. Everything's just way too expensive. Something has got to change. Something has got to snap. Something has got to crack. Okay? We cannot have our families living in cars, dude. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, tell me what you think.
So this past month, my boyfriend and I cut down on our water usage a great deal. We saved about 500 gallons of water. I want you to guess how much our water bill went down by, though. If you guessed just over $2, you would be correct. That is how much the taxes on stormwater and sewage and everything else that's included in your water bill have gone up, to the point where you saving 500 gallons of water makes no difference, basically. Florida has become so unaffordable, and I really haven't heard anybody talk about how expensive our utilities alone have become in Florida. We've got insurance companies pulling out of Florida because it's more likely that there are natural disasters here now than not. And that's not profitable. Having to pay people to fix their houses isn't profitable, so why be in that state, It's not like that's what insurance is for. And our salaries aren't keeping up with this, obviously, because why would they? Why would we need more money to survive? We're not even going to get into groceries and the cost of living in general in Florida. Utilities is just scratching the surface. This is one of the many reasons my boyfriend and I are moving to Lisbon in less than a year. Because we just can't do it anymore. We can't take it anymore. Like, in what world is any of this normal? Oh, and to those of you that voted Republican, is your life any better now? Is your life any better now that you've made trans people's lives harder? Is your life any better now that you've made abortion pretty much inaccessible to women in Florida? Is your life any better now that everything is way more expensive? Because I know the vast majority of you do not have millions and millions of dollars. I know you all are feeling the squeeze, but because you're sheep, you probably blame this on the Democrats. Even though all three branches of our government are currently red. Anyways, thanks for listening. Thought I'd share all this.
If you are not struggling financially right now, then you need to consider yourself completely blessed. Like, don't even consider yourself. You are completely blessed. Like, every time I check my local mom group on Facebook, I see requests or people asking where they can get some financial assistance to pay utilities or assistance with rent. And it's concerning because these people are working full-time jobs and they just can't make things work right now. For example, this morning, a woman posted she's an RN working 2 jobs and still is struggling. I know we're all complaining about how expensive things are. For me, personally, like my car insurance doubled in August. I was paying around $140 a month, and now I'm paying $280 for 2 vehicles, and I'm one driver. And I have never had a claim. There was no reason for the increase other than they just increased me. On top of that, Florida Power and Light rules the entire state of Florida now. They bought out Gulf Power, and since then, all I ever hear about from people is how astronomical their utility bills are. Everyone is trying to find ways to save money. But as soon as we save money in one area, something else goes up. So it's just kind of like we're sliding this scale back and forth and it's actually like increasing. We're never saving, no matter how hard we try. Like, I stopped eating out with my kids. Obviously, eating out is super expensive, but I went almost a month no eating out, and it was still a struggle. And if you made it this far, I don't mean this to be like a pity party thing. I'm figuring it out. But last Friday, my birthday, my boss cut my hours in half. So yeah, I guess this is also like a PSA to people who aren't struggling right now. Don't be tone deaf, because you never know what's going on behind the scenes. If you start to notice behavior changes and lifestyle changes, I can promise you it's because people are being proactive or, I don't know, maybe reactive to their financial situation. It's just a mess.
The federal minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour. It hasn't increased since 2009. Meanwhile, the cost of living has risen dramatically. Even in states where the minimum wage is higher, it often still can't match the reality of today's prices. A full-time worker earning minimum wage cannot afford a one-bedroom apartment anywhere in America's major cities. Many can't afford one even in smaller towns. People are taking second jobs, third jobs, late-night shifts, weekend work, and gig jobs just to keep up. Yet the more they work, the more life seems to pull away from them. Hard work used to mean progress. Now for many, it just means survival.
In 1970, the minimum wage was $1.40. That is $224 a month. However, the average apartment was only $108. So for 48% of your check, you could get an apartment. Fast forward to 2024, the federal minimum wage is $7.25, which is $1,160 a month, but the average apartment is $1,700. You cannot even afford an apartment today. In fact, if you make twice the minimum wage, you cannot afford an apartment in 2024. If you want to know what it was like growing up in 1970, the average apartment today should be $556. Millennials and Gen Zers, can you imagine how incredible life would be if rent was only $556? But let's look back to 1970 at the median household income. It was $8,700, and the median house price was just $17,000, so just 2 times the yearly salary. Fast forward to today, median household income $85,000, median house $400,000. That is 4.7 times. If you want to know what it was like in 1970, the average house today should be $170,000, which is fair, which would help everyone get into a house, and the American dream would still be alive. So yes, things are always difficult difficult for every generation, but it is significantly harder for millennials and Gen Zers. So boomers, let's stop beefing with each other and let's see how we can help the millennials and Gen Zers have a bright future.
Now, they say 25 an hour is too much for minimum wage, but what if that's exactly what it takes to make sure that nobody in this country is poor? Let me break it down. Now, 1, cost of living has gotten way out of control. Groceries doubled, rent tripled, but paychecks has remained the same. Why is that? $15 an hour in 2010 buys less than $8 worth of stuff today. You do the math. 2, one job should be enough. Nobody should have to work 2 or 3 jobs to survive. Let people breathe, let people save, and let them build. 25 an hour does that for them. 3, it grows the economy, not kills it. When workers make more, they spend more, and then that money can go to small businesses and not billion-dollar corporations who still won't do anything to save this economy. 4, it raises the bar for skilled workers, right? If they're paying entry-level jobs 25 an hour, that raises the bar for people with a skill. Welders, electricians, nurses, teachers will finally get their just due. You know why? Because it's not going to be anybody with a skill that's like, well, if I'm welding and I can get 25 working at McDonald's, then I might as well just go to McDonald's instead of welding. So they're going to have to raise it up to make up for that gap. Y'all dig what I'm saying? 5, it breaks poverty cycles. Higher wages mean less debts and fewer evictions and more people owning homes. Now that's how you fix America from the ground up. Understand, the goal is not to make everyone rich. It's just to make sure that nobody's poor, right? In a country that's considered the best country to y'all, poverty should have already been illegal.
Sometimes I wonder if our country thinks that poor people should just die. I say this because our federal minimum wage is $7.25, and even though in a lot of states it's higher than that, right? Like, for example, I'm from New York City, and it's $16.50 right now. Even with that, you would be living in poverty. And I don't think it's crazy to think that people who work minimum wage jobs should not be living at the poverty line. And then they tell the poor to go to college so you don't end up in a minimum wage job. So you go to college, you take out thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. And then you work a minimum wage job throughout college to pay for it and interest, right? And then you get out of college even more in debt than you were prior. And then best case scenario, you do get a job straight out of college and then you spend 20 plus years paying it back. Yeah, that definitely does sound like the American dream, and I cannot wait to continue living it.
Housing has become one of the biggest sources of financial pressure. Rent keeps rising. Apartments that once cost $900 a month now cost $1,500 or more, often without any improvements. Landlords increase rent because the market allows it, regardless of whether a tenant can afford it. Buying a home has become nearly impossible for younger generations. Prices have skyrocketed far beyond income growth. A house that once cost $150,000 now sells for $350,000 to $600,000 or more in many areas. Even saving becomes difficult when every dollar is needed just to get by. People are being priced out of their communities, forced to move farther away, spending more time and money commuting to work. Grocery prices have surged across the country. The cost of everyday items like milk, eggs, vegetables, bread, and meat has risen sharply. Companies often blame global supply chains and fuel costs, but many major food corporations have reported record profits at the same time. For families, this means choices. Some parents are cutting their own meals to make sure their children can eat. Grocery shopping is no longer routine. It's strategic. It's stressful. It's survival planning.
I don't know who's buying all this new construction, but it sure as hell ain't nobody I know. I don't know where y'all live, but where I'm at, they're building, like, everywhere. New townhomes, new condos, new luxury apartments, new shopping plazas, new everything. But this the thing, none of it's affordable. Homes starting at $450,000, $600,000. And don't even ask about the rent prices. Interest rates damn near 7%. Wages ain't moved. Groceries are sky high. but somehow they still keep building. So I keep asking myself, well, who is all this building for? It's sure not for the folks that already live there. It's not for single moms. Definitely ain't for retirees. And not the working class people that are already barely holding on. So tell me, who's buying this? Who are they building for? 'Cause it ain't us, y'all. It feels like we're getting pushed out of our own neighborhoods while somebody else cashes in. Drop a comment if you notice the same thing where you live. 'Cause something ain't adding up, y'all.
So I was just out on a walk right now and check out these homes next to this path that I'm on. I was looking these homes up on Zillow, and you're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 615, 625, 650 in some cases for these really tiny houses. I mean, they're not very big. You can see the properties they're sitting on are tiny, and yet people want $650,000 for these homes at what, 6.25% interest rates? Like, no wonder nobody can afford anything.
President Trump is tired of hearing about how much things are costing you.
So I don't want to hear about the affordability, because right now we're much less. If you look at energy, we're getting close to $2 a gallon gasoline. With Biden, it was $4.50, $5. Another thing, inflation. We had the worst inflation in the history of our country. Now we have virtually no inflation at all. It's down at a very low number and a very normal number.
That was Trump just last night. Now, you can feel any way you want about what the president just said. As always, I do not report on feelings in this video. I'm going to get into the actual facts and the numbers when it comes to what he's talking about, gasoline and inflation. But before I do that, I just want to take you back a few years. Do you remember when inflation was really high? And I was reporting on it here on my page every single month. But President Biden and his entire administration would say up and down and over again that inflation was transitory. And then when the inflation numbers did actually start to come down, the Biden administration kept saying, see, the economy is getting better. But you called bullshit. You said over and over that the cost of living was too high. I know, because you were telling it to me in my comment section too. And that was happening because you were feeling the long-term effects of inflation. You were seeing it in your grocery prices and your gas prices. And because of that disconnect between what you were saying very loudly about the very real cost of living and what the Biden administration was trying to convince you of based on the numbers, what happened during the 2024 election? In the end, Democrats lost the House, the Senate, and the White House. Now, I just wanted to remind you of that episode because just like what happened with President Biden, what President Trump is saying now is not connecting to what you are saying about this economy and the cost of living and prices being too high. Okay, so now let's get into the actual numbers. You heard Trump say gas prices are getting close to $2 a gallon. According to AAA, as of yesterday, the average price for a gallon of regular gas in this country was $3.08. That is only 3 cents cheaper than it was a year ago. And diesel, that's sitting at $3.71 a gallon, which is 14 cents higher than it was a year ago. So none of that is anywhere close to $2 a gallon. But in the state of Mississippi, the average cost for a gallon of regular is $2.61. That is the closest to $2 a gallon I could find. But it's still 61 cents above $2. Now, let's talk about inflation. Trump keeps saying that we had the worst inflation, and now we have virtually no inflation. Well, he's partially right. Coming out of the pandemic in June of 2022, we saw inflation spike to 9.1%. That was bad. But was it the worst we've ever seen in the history of our country? No. We've had several periods of higher inflation. For example, in the late 1970s and early 80s, inflation peaked at 14%. Just ask your parents and grandparents about it. They'll tell you. Now, let's talk about this other claim that President Trump keeps making. He keeps saying we have virtually no inflation. And your groceries and energy bills, he says, those are great. It's the press who's lying to you about it.
Our energy costs are way down. Our groceries are way down. Everything is way down. And the press doesn't report it. The press reports whatever the con people say. You know, I call the Democrats con men and women. They make up numbers.
Okay, so let's start with overall inflation, and then I'll talk about grocery prices and energy prices specifically. As I've been reporting every single month for years, the U.S. government releases a report on inflation every month coincidentally. Trump's own Bureau of Labor Statistics said in the month of September, which is the most recent report we have, inflation increased 3% when compared to September of 2024. It also increased between August and September of this year. The Federal Reserve wants inflation to be increasing at no more than 2% every year. So the fact, according to Trump's own government, is generally inflation is going up, not down, and it is not virtually gone. It's very much still around. Now, let's talk about grocery prices. According to that same September CPI report, the price you are paying for every single item at the grocery store was 2.7% more than it was in September of 2024. And if you can afford to go out to a restaurant and eat, the report found in the month of September, that would have cost you 3.7% more than it did in September of 2024. So grocery prices and food prices are up well above the 2% Federal Reserve target. Last, let's talk about energy, and that's a doozy. I already told you about gas prices, but energy isn't just about gasoline. The same September CPI report found electricity is up more than 5% year over year, and natural gas is up almost 12% between September of this year and September of last year. Trump said none of that's a problem, but the only problem he does see is with Republicans who are not telling you how great Trump's economy is.
So the affordability is much better with the Republicans. The only problem is the Republicans don't talk about it. And Republicans should start talking about it and use their heads, because we have great numbers. We have great, and they're going to only get better.
My husband and I are in the same boat as so many people right now, and I just logged in to our health insurance provider, and I can't even, in July of 2025, our health insurance premium went from $59 a month to $798 a month. And since it is now open enrollment, I just logged in to our health insurance to see what, if we stay on the same plan, what our premium is going to be for 2026. $1,208.91 a month. Our family deductible has gone from $0 to $11,900. Our primary care copays have doubled. Our urgent care copay went from $10 to $60. Our generic prescription copay has doubled. And this is coming off of the fact that my husband just had to have a prescription filled that is supposed to be covered by insurance. And you want to know what the copay was on that after insurance? $1,200 for a prescription, on top of the $798 health insurance premium that we just paid. And this doesn't have to do, this is separate from everyone else's rising costs in health insurance, but we are self-employed. We are real estate agents. And this is just in addition to the next time somebody wants to devalue or question how much their real estate agent is getting paid and wants them to take a reduction in their commission, just remember that your real estate agent is going through the same things as you, paying this out of pocket if they even have health insurance, withholding their own taxes, if they can even afford to do so. And this is on top of the multitudes of thousands of dollars per month we have to pay in housing, or the thousands of dollars a month my mother was costing us before I cut her off recently. We can't, and it's not like the real estate market is just on fire right now. I don't know if we can keep our heads above water next year. And I know we're not the only ones going through this, and it just makes me sick.
This is not just about numbers and charts. This is about real people. People working themselves to exhaustion just to keep their heads above water. Young adults delaying families and futures. Seniors choosing between food and medication. The stress, the uncertainty, and the constant financial pressure are wearing people down. The American dream has shifted. For many, it's no longer about getting ahead. It's about not falling behind. The cost of living crisis is reshaping the country. If wages do not rise, if housing does not become affordable, and if corporations continue to prioritize profits over people, the struggle will only deepen. This is no longer about comfort, it's about survival. And if nothing changes, millions will continue to fall into hardship that could have been prevented.